court of law, and a life sentence was imposed on these people. Mr. President, we must not restrain ourselves from speaking the truth. In Capitol in Rome, where the Senate originated, they debated situations and circumstances in Rome, and they delivered democracy to the world, and we are beneficiaries of it today. The reality of our country is the lack of confidence of the people of Nigeria in governance and in the institutions of governance. The entire justice value chain in Nigeria has collapsed, from policing to investigation to prosecution and to even the prison system. I was in Kaduna and Zaria prisons last week. The walls of Kaduna prison were built in 1915. And you raised this memo and you better listen to it. Please, there is problem in our country and our people are beginning to react. The opportunity we have now, Mr. President, is that if you look at the pattern of violence in Nigeria, violence in Nigeria is beginning to take a vertical motion. The poor have stopped killing themselves. They are now scaling up. In Mubi, children of the elite have been killed. The same thing is happening here. The reason why this is all over the media is because of the configuration of the people that have been killed. There have been several Nigerians who are not undergraduates, who are vulganizers. They sell roasted corn on the street. They have been lynched, but nothing has been said. We are now speaking up because the profile of the victims are beginning to change. And if nothing is done to stop this, we are going to have what you call a coalition of the oppressed. And then the state will be in trouble. The elites will be in trouble. Professor Aluko said sometimes ago, God bless his soul, he said, the rich should be careful and take care of the poor. Otherwise, they will not be able to sleep because the poor is awake. That is the situation we are facing. This issue is just ALU is giving us the case study to work on. It is not an ALU situation. It is not an ALU problem. It is a Nigerian problem. We are beginning to face a situation, Mr. President, with every due apologies, with every due respect, we are beginning to face a situation of a failed state. The government no longer has a monopoly of violence, which is embedded in its police. The people have become violent, and the state can no longer cope. And with the chapter 33 of our constitution says every Nigerian has a right to life. These children, these students have been denied life. And the constitution of Nigeria, as far as these children are concerned, has failed. It has disappointed them. They have not been able to lay claim to life due to no fault of theirs. And we have to face this issue, Mr. President. This is the Senate of the Federal Republic. And this is the last point of representation. We must speak up. The other time we were standing down here, Senator Chukwumerije talked about failed states. What are the symptoms of failed states? Breakdown of law and order. Violence becomes a property for everybody to use to settle scores. Mr. President, what is the problem with a federal police without intermediate policing structures in this country? Why? Should we prefer vigilantes that are not regulated? Community vigilantes, can they take the place of regulated subnational police systems? What is wrong in that? Mr. President, we have to debate these issues. It is not just about the killing and the dying of these students. Something is structurally wrong with our country. And the institutions that are supposed to provide safety, support, and succor for our children, they are dying. They are dying. We feel protected here because we are remote from these people. We have police escorts. We are able to protect ourselves, but our constituents are not able to. There is a senator here who represents Alu.
For them to Adetunmbi, wait. For them to record what you are saying, you have to put on your mic. And please don't turn this into a State of the Nation address. Just address the issue. I think you've talked quite a lot on a number of issues. I have no problem, but address the issue, please.
The President, Nigeria, what I have for Nigeria is love and total affection. But the truth must be told to Nigeria and those who manage Nigeria. Mr. President, I rest my case.
Thank you. Welcome.
Distinguished Senator,
he has that we retain existing provisions. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I think the issue of autonomy of local government, if passed as recommended, will amount to a reversal of our federalism, because we know that the component parts of this federation are states, and local government are legitimate and legal components of states. This proposal as offered to the nation will amount to creating state within a state, and it will erode the authority of state governors, because when you have state governments creating local governments, giving political life to local governments, and the local governments derive financial muscle from other sources outside the source of their creation, I think it introduces a lot of confusion into the federalism that we are trying to improve upon. With that purpose, I think it is important that if we cannot take local government away from the constitution and let states manage their local governments the way they wish as administrative units of their states, then we should leave the constitution the way it is. Because if you cannot improve on the constitution, I don't think we should damage it any further. Mr. President, the alteration to Clause 9 is a wonderful innovation by this committee, and it will be recorded in history as a fundamental change on how constitution making can be done. Because I think, Mr. President, that the procedure for initiation of a new constitution as contained in this proposal leaves that initiative to that of the distinguished Senate President and the Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives. Very good. We like that, but we can improve on this if the referendum that is proposed to give legitimacy to the proposal is offered up front to actually let Nigerians say through a referendum that we want a new constitution. I think the what I call the demand side referendum, beyond the Speaker and the Senate President, Nigerians should be given an opportunity to say yes or no to whether the country needs a new constitution or not, and not leave that decision to an elected speaker from one constituency out of over 300 and a Senate President. I think this is a substantial improvement for further democratization. Mr. President, finally, because of time, I would like to comment on the issue of when bills are not signed by Mr. President, for it to be automatically, become law. I think the purpose of sending draft bills that have been passed to the President
is part of that due process of some kind of second consideration, or of a final consideration. And when it comes back to the Parliament, 2/3 is required. By this proposal, we are abolishing that 2/3. I don't think it is wise, because this return of that bill back to Parliament gives Parliament an opportunity to reflect all over again, using the 2/3 mechanism as a substitute for the purpose of asking Mr. President to give assent. Because of time, Mr. President, I will have my seat. Thank you very much.
Distinguished Senator Olubunmi.
Section of the Constitution in terms of service delivery to the people. And the section 17, 3, sub 3, C and D states directly the obligation of the Federation in the area of health, which is clearly stated here. And this bill speaks to this subject in a very, very eloquent manner. Mr. President, if we continue to interpret this bill on the basis of responsibility of tiers of government, we will be missing the point. Because the essence of a government in itself is protection of life and property and the provision of health services. One of the greatest problems of this country, as far as its international image is concerned, is the basic socio-economic statistics of our country in the areas of education and in the areas of health. And it is the accumulation of these statistics that classifies us as a poor, developing or non-developing country, and of which our health statistics is in a state of embarrassment to everybody that cannot reconcile the resources of our country with the state of our human capital, particularly the young people who need this primary health care in every nook and corners of this country. And to my mind, this bill represents the commitment and the essence of the federal government to the reversal of some of the statistics that we say misbrand Nigeria and wrongly puts us as a country that does not care for its people. The removal of this percentage tends to give a discretion that is limitless and that cannot actually decide to do zero allocation. It is totally unguided, and that is the essence of this percentage. One of the things that we need to do, which I think is beyond this Committee on Health, is I think as a Parliament, we need to do a summary of all such enacted percentages, and as a Parliament here, between the Committee on Finance and Appropriation, we should be updating ourselves and say, how do we adjust this thing so that whatever is left as balances to the federal government for all forms of allocations is not severely affected? But for us to sit down here and argue for the removal of this 2% in a critical sector like health, where international and domestic statistics is saying that Nigeria is performing below par to even including countries that have the beauty of oil as a source of revenue, I think it's a disservice to the people that we represent here. Secondly, the whole issue of counterpart funding has been clearly stated in the law. So it's not a Father Christmas by the federal government, it's a conditional grant that enables serious-minded states who meet these conditions of this disbursement and who feel sufficiently strongly about the health status of a citizen is given a provision by the federal government to have access to federal help. And I think that is the essence of this bill. It's so crucial, it's so important to the future of our country, because if we lose all our children at infancy stage, then we lose the opportunity of future senators and future House of Representatives, future Senate President, including future President of this country. That is what this bill is trying to avoid, and I think we owe it a duty to our people to make sure that this